experiencing some sort of moral decay. I mean, you look at the countries that have the lowest rates of crime in Western Europe, especially Scandinavia. These are secular nations primarily. I really don't see any. You're going to have to give me, I think, a clearer example of moral decay. I mean, if you define homosexuality as moral decay, that's one thing. But how is homosexuality an immorality except for the account of the Bible?
Okay. Well, you can look around at the world that we live in, at the teenagers of today, and see moral decay. I mean, every teenager, well, most of the teenagers that I know, they cuss all the time, even when they're in the presence of women, of older people, and of younger children. More and more teenagers smoke and drink underage. More and more teenagers have premarital sex, which brings about teenage pregnancy. And on the account of homosexuality, what I'd like to say about it is that, does it affect my life? No. Do I care about those people? Yes, because I believe in hell and I don't want to see them go there. But it's not just because of my biblical beliefs that I'm against homosexuality. I'm against homosexuality because it doesn't allow a person to procreate. If we start allowing gays to get married, that's going to encourage other people to be gay. That's going to have them get married, and eventually the human race is going to start to get smaller, because if gays are constantly getting married, you can't procreate. Now, more moral decay that I'd like to talk about, look at the video games and movies of today. You can't watch a movie without seeing some kind of graphic sex scene, some kind of bad violence, and all this affects the world that we live in. The media plays a big part on the society. So that's just many examples of how the world is in moral decay. Family values are being stripped away from the teenagers of today. Now, the old people, the people that are in their 60s and 70s, they still are very moral. But, I agree with him. I try to be as moral as I slip up once or twice.
I just want to interrupt. I think your camera is malfunctioning because I'm getting a still frame. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm trying to figure that out.
That is, experience equal treatment in due process under the law as guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. I don't think that's an unreasonable claim. And it implies that homosexuality is something that is taught. This is a perspective that has been rejected by the whole of the psychological and medical community. While it is unlikely that a behavior such as sexuality, which is a complex behavior, hinges or impinges on a single gene, I think the evidence is fairly strong that homosexuality, whether or not it comes from early environment or genetics, is definitely not something that the homosexual man or woman has any volition, any choice in the matter. So I think it's absurd to suggest that if we allow homosexuality, we'll end up with a world populated by homosexuals. Because has your experience with homosexuals made you any more likely to become a gay person? Or made you any more attracted to men? Because I have several homosexual friends that I'm very close to, and I'm still very much a heterosexual. With regards to video games and movies, listen, these are all fictional worlds that kids play in. and a far cry from, say, the Middle Ages, where the spectator sport would be a public execution, or Rome, where they would have gladiatorial battles. Yeah, I saw Iberian Wolf mention the suspension of disbelief. There's a big difference between that sort of entertainment and the entertainment we have today. But even then, I don't think you addressed any of my arguments on how morality has actually improved over the last centuries, and how we have women are treated as equals, races are treated as equals. There's a move, globalization, where we're trying to say we acknowledge the fact that capitalism and global trade inhibits certain countries from participating in that trade, and as a consequence, they're unable to support themselves in the global market. So now global markets, the IMF and World Bank, were created. If you're just pointing towards the teenagers today as your main line of reasoning, I have to call you on that.
Okay. Well, I've got three little points that I'd like to touch on. First of all, you said that people are, if they're homosexuals, they are born gay. There is actually no evidence that shows that homosexuals are born gay. And actually, if homosexuals are attracted to an inanimate object, you see, you can't say that you would be born gay, because there is actually no evidence, no scientific evidence anyway, that shows this. I've talked to many people who study science, and they've told me this. Now, second of all, I'd like to touch on fictional games. You say that video games is all a fictional world. Well, I was watching the news one time, and they had a school shooter who had actually not killed himself like the rest of them. He was on there talking to them about what was going through his mind when he was killing all these people at this school. Reality is not like that, but the fact is, if people constantly play these games, then that gets to their head. Whatever happened to games like Mario, like the little orange guy, the Crash Bandicoot? Yeah, but it's those fictional games that is poisoning the minds of all the people in the world. Now, globalization is the third point I'd like to touch on. You spoke of how morality has increased, and that women are treated equally and races are treated equally and all of this. Well, yes, this is happening. However, it is different. I mean, if you look at the world that we live in, I mean, isn't it a little obvious that morality is not good when now globalization is actually another one of the end times prophecies. During the end times, the 7-year tribulation, the Antichrist will establish a one world government in which he will be the supreme ruler. I don't know what kind of government it will be, whether it will be socialism or communism or capitalism or anything, but he will establish a one world government. Now, that's just another thing that proves to me that the Bible prophecy.
Okay, fair enough. Video games are new. Sociopaths